doing? Oh, it's okay. You can applaud.
Oh, I like these cards. All right, then. Not in order. It's going to confuse everybody. Oh.
Is everybody looking?
Good enough.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is our STS-135 post-landing news conference with Atlantis' astronauts. And we'll start with some comments from the crew, and then we'll take questions. So we'll turn it over now to our commander, Chris first. Chris?
Well, hello. As I think we're elated to be back here in Florida. The weather was perfect today. You know, one of the things we always have in the back of our mind is are we going to end up back in Florida? Are we going to end up in California? Mike Leinbach, the launch director, before we launched, said, you may not go to California. So we had to come back to Florida. Fortunately, the weather cooperated, and we had a nice pre-dawn landing. I'll just pass it down the line here real quick. To my left, Sandy Magnus, MS-1. She was the chief load master. She had to haul all the heavy stuff on and out of the MPLM. She did everything from robotics to taking care of us on the middeck. And she was just a tremendous asset to this crew, and I'm proud to have called her my crewmate. Sandy?
Yeah, the mission was incredibly busy. We knew it was going to be incredibly busy when we started. We got tons of help from the space station crew, and with their help and all the great work that these guys did, we were able to get all of that cargo transferred, and then more cargo transferred back to the MPLM. And yeah, I just have to say it was such a pleasure to be on the International Space Station again. That's such a magical, wonderful place. And in some ways I felt like I'd never left, but it's even bigger than it was 2 years ago. It's just a spectacular place. On my left is Mission Specialist 2, Rex Wilhelm, and he was our EVA guru and transfer guru as well. He did a lot in the MPLM that you may or may not have seen on the camera, but he was in there every day practically when he wasn't doing EVA stuff. And it's been real fun flying with Rex. We're classmates, and it's been really great sharing this experience with him.
Thanks, Sandy. And basically for transfer, I just did what Sandy said to do, and that's pretty much what all we did. And it was an absolutely great experience. It was tremendously busy, as Sandy said. I think you've heard that before. And I just want to say what an honor it has been to be part of the Space Shuttle program. I started 26 years ago as a back room for the MAX flight controller, and I have loved every minute that I've been part of the space program. It's been such an honor, and it runs in the blood. I think you notice here when you talk to people here at the Kennedy Space Center, at the Johnson Space Center, that it just runs in the blood. And it's just everybody just wants to be a part of it, and we understand it's time to transition, but we're going to cherish every minute of it. I do want to thank all the folks who on the ground who helped us out here at the Kennedy Space Center to get us off in a very exciting launch and to recover us on a wonderful landing, and then also the mission control and all the folks at the other space flight centers who helped us during the mission. And on my left is pilot Doug Hurley. Doug was the chief of the great undocking and fly-around you saw, and I'm sure it looked pretty, and you saw pictures of it, but it was pretty challenging inside. And Mr. Marine here was calm as a cucumber as all things were lining up, and as we were all doing a different task, and he was just running the show, and he did a great job. So with that, Doug.
Thanks, Rex. I don't know what else to say other than we are glad to be back here in Florida. It felt like about a 2-month mission crammed into 13 days. We ran from dawn till dusk, literally up there, and I think we left the station better than we found it, and I think we've got them set up for the long haul. And anyway, Fergie never gets introduced, so other than to just say the commander, but you know, he's the guy who he's the glue that kind of kept us together, heading in the same direction for this, I think, almost surreal from start to finish experience. And I don't think any of you appreciate kind of the demands and kind of the pressures and the emails that only Chris gets that he dealt with, and there was absolutely no indication, positive or negative, to the rest of us, and he just, you know, kept us going in the right direction. And you know, we can't say enough about Sandy, but we also can't say enough about Chris. He just was a great guy to work for, and I'd like to do it again with him sooner rather than later.
Thanks, Doug.
All right, with that, we'll take questions. Please be sure to give your name and affiliation when the microphone comes to you. And we'll start down here in the front with Marcia.
Marcia Dunn, Associated Press. We just heard from Mike Leinbach that tears were flowing on the runway when you guys came in. I'd like to know if tears were flowing in the cockpit and what were the emotions at touchdown at Will Stop.
I think what I'd say is we each got choked up at different times of the mission. It's funny because there are certain times where you have to do nothing but concentrate, and you can't feel the historic nature of it. Like, for instance, when Doug was doing the undocking, I mean, it was a magnificent sight. It was dark, and we were departing, and I was a little bit set back so I could be a little bit more detached for the first part. And when the station crew said that Atlantis is departing, that was one that really choked me up. And I know there are other parts that really choke people up too, and it's just it kind of depended on what part of the mission you were at and what your job was. But there were times that you would just take the big picture, and it would get to you.
Peter?
Good afternoon, Peter King with CBS News Radio, and thanks for answering the same hundreds of questions hundreds of times. Instead of looking back, I want you to look ahead, because every 10 years or so we interview Gene Cernan on the anniversary of him being the last man to walk on the moon. In 10 years, when you come back as the last shuttle crew for the anniversary, where do you think we will be? Not where you hope we'll be, but where do you think we'll be in terms of the U.S. and human space flight and exploration?
Yeah, that's a great question, Peter. It really is. I know where I hope we'll be. As to where I think we'll be, given everything that I know today, I think that we'll be traversing back and forth a low Earth orbit with one of the 4 or 5 vehicles that are being considered right now. I think that that's going to be a well-traveled path. I think that we're going to have people spending either short or perhaps long periods of time in orbit who have paid for a trip there. I don't think it's too much unlike the airlines. You recall that the whole airline industry, the whole aviation industry, got started with NACA. They designed airfoils. They enabled aviation to take off. And NASA, I think, has really laid the foundation for spaceflight and commercial spaceflight to take off. So I think in 10 years we'll see that. I think we'll be on the verge, if not have already launched a heavy lift vehicle. NASA's developed and designed heavy lift vehicle with the intent of leaving low Earth orbit. If we're not there, we'll have been there very shortly. So personally, that's where I think we're going to be. And I don't know. Clearly, it's my opinion, and I hope that it's something that does take place, because we do really need something to look forward to. I know right now is a little bit of a time of mourning, if you will, but that's to be expected. We've said that we're saying goodbye to a good friend, and we'll get over that. And we'll once we get over it, we'll start looking forward, and we'll make it happen again.
Okay, right here.
Hi, Clara Moskowitz with Space.com, and I'm wondering if any or all of you plan to visit the shuttles, especially Atlantis, once they're installed in their museum homes?
Yeah, I think it would be nice to see them in their museum homes. And it'll be kind of interesting, too, because we'll have a perspective of someone who's lived on the shuttle and operated it. So I think to go and kind of see it through other people's eyes as they've chosen to display it, and watch people. I think it'd be fun, actually, to go to a museum and watch people look at the shuttle and sort of listen to the comments that they're making. That, I think, would be very interesting.
It's right here.
Hi, Kim Spilderud with the Norwegian spaceflight magazine Romfart 4X. Before the flight, you spoke of that you didn't think you'd start to think, wouldn't be start to sink in, that this is sort of the final flight of the space shuttle. Now you've walked around the vehicle, you had a couple of hours to sort of start to be in the ground again. Has that started to sink in that this is it for the space shuttle?
Yeah, and I think when it actually started to sink in sooner than I thought it would. It was in flight, like I was talking about earlier. Every once in a while, it would start to sink in, and it was like mostly in the quiet times. Like another time was when we're on the mid deck of the space shuttle, where we kind of live and sleep. And I was down there just thinking about all the other crews that had gone before me, and you're thinking, "Oh, this is the last time." And someone was asking us whether we would go to visit the Atlantis in the museum someday, and I certainly plan to. I plan to go with my kids and take them and show them when it's on display in a beautiful place here at the Kennedy Space Center, and think back that we were the last crew that lived on there. And I'm sure Doug can point out my peach apricot stains on the lockers too and everything. So.
Hi, Eben Brown, Fox News Radio. How did Atlantis perform on her final trip? She went up, came back, she landed, being towed back. What shape is she in? And if by some magical reason there were another set of SRBs in an external tank and they said go fly, could she do it?
Doug?
Yeah, most definitely. Everything we asked of her, she gave us. Other than we had a wake-up call in the middle of the night. One of the GPCs got a little cranky, but that happens. I mean, everything worked just like it was supposed to. And Chris and Rex and I got a little practice with some malfunction procedures to get the GPCs back in order. But that was not a big deal. And it was probably a bigger deal down here than it really was up there. But the funniest thing about that one, and that's really, frankly, the only thing I can think of that was even, that doesn't work, or that doesn't, light switch, everything worked perfectly. But it was just, the memory I'll have of that is, the alarm went off, we're all in our sleeping bags, the mid-deck's dark, and Chris and I pop out of our sleeping bags, and we look at each other and go, what was that? and then we get out of our sleeping bags, we go up to the flight deck, we turn on a display, and we sort out that it was GPC-4, and then I think Chris described them as gophers coming out of their holes. Rex pops up the ladder, hey, what's going on? And then Sandy, who was sleeping on Space Station, popped up after that. So that's going to...
What do we say? Will everybody please just go back to bed?
Go
we'll
back
take
to
care
sleep.
of this.
We got it. But no, Angie Brewer and her team had Atlantis ready to go, and I guarantee you 60 days from now she could go again.
It's right here.
Hi, Robert Perlman with CollectSpace.com. Rex's apricot stains notwithstanding, did you as a crew leave anything of yourselves on board Atlantis before leaving, perhaps like the Final Four inscription that you did on the simulators back in Houston?
We did. We left a little something. We didn't want to make it permanent. We certainly didn't want to. We didn't want to deface Atlantis. We wanted to leave it up to the ground processing crew to decide what to do with what we left behind. But we left an inscription, a little plaque, and it was basically a tribute to the people who had worked on the space shuttle program since the day one, thanking them for their dedication, and just let them know how much we thought about the work that they do from the astronauts, from the people who get to operate the vehicle that they maintain. A lot of people think the astronauts live here in Florida and we rub elbows with these folks every day, but we don't. We live far away, and sometimes it's a little bit of an effort to get out here and give them the thanks and the praise they deserve, and we try to go the extra yard.
And for the record, I did clean up my peach apricot drink stain.
You did. Mostly.
The pilot made them.
Brian Locke, Delaware County Times, near Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Now that the wheels have stopped, when one STS-135 is mentioned, what will be your most memorable moment of that flight, and what would be your most memorable moment of all your flights?
Oh, wow. That's hard.
That's a hard one.
Well, probably not one you would think. When the countdown clock stops at 31 seconds and somebody says the clock has stopped due to a malfunction, that tends to stick with you. The first question that comes to mind is, well, what kind of malfunction? And that's just the pilot's perspective. I think if I had to look at it from the layman's perspective, just the image of the space station up there, and unfortunately we cannot convey enough. You've seen pictures, but the pictures just do not capture the majesty of what humans have built in low Earth orbit. I mean, this is just an immense vehicle, and people are just living and working in it like it's Earth, only they float from module to module. It's almost a surreal experience, and that's probably my most touchy-feely memory.
Frank Moriarty, New Jersey Monthly, to continue the Northeast area. And Chris, the Eagles hat's for you. But the question is for Sandy. You have more spaceflight time in orbit than the rest of the crew. And with the conclusion of this mission in the shuttle program, it seems like the rules of the game are changing, both in terms of the spacecraft that will be used in the years to come, as well as the inception of commercial crew low Earth orbit operations, contrasting with NASA's plans for deep space exploration. Do you foresee a time when there may be different career paths for astronauts based on low Earth operations versus deep space? Is it getting to a point where that may be a consideration? You have to decide which direction you want to go in?
Yeah, I think that's a conceivable idea, because as you get more access to low Earth orbit, of course, the scope of missions possible increases, and so that would require a whole different type of skill set. So it becomes, I hate to say this, but it becomes kind of a less of an exploration and more of a utilization, whereas the deep space missions are more of an exploration flavor, and that requires different skill sets. So I think just as when the shuttle came online, you saw an expansion of the types of opportunities available for people. You know, we now needed scientists and medical doctors and a wider variety of skill sets for that. I think you'll see the same thing here during this transition. So every little leap broadens the possibilities for people to go to space.
And we have time for just one final question right here.
Mark Ratterman from Talking Space. On the subject of commitment, question for Doug Hurley. You each individually said yes, you'd be a member of STS-135 crew. What happens from today? What things do you continue to do as a crew? What's happening in the near future for you together?
I think today we're probably going to go out and get a nice meal somewhere, and then head back to Houston tomorrow, say hi to the folks back there, and then we start in debriefs on Monday, physicals and debriefs again. We had some medical stuff earlier, so we'll probably be pretty busy. The debrief process usually takes a couple weeks, and then there's some post-flight PR appearances that we'll do after that. So we've got a few more months, I think, together, which is great, because it would be hard to kind of stop it right now. So I think that's generally what we'll be doing over the next probably couple, 3 months.
Okay, we've got just about a minute. James, if you can give us a quick one, we'll come right here to you.
James Dean with Florida Today. I had a question for Doug as well. You waited a very long time for your first flight. I believe it was like 9 years. And I just wondered if, hopefully it's not that long for the next one, but did that experience give you any kind of perspective, any lessons learned in terms of patience, perseverance that you think might help you and the rest of the astronaut corps, anyone else involved with the program to kind of deal with the gap that's to come?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're still going to fly people. Obviously, the rate's going to be 3 or 4 a year rather than 30 or 40. For my class, the timing was not very good for flying quickly. But there were folks in Rex and Sandy's class that waited 10, 11 years. So it definitely builds some perseverance if you didn't have any. Although, frankly, most of us didn't get here because we didn't have any perseverance. But it definitely. It's worth the wait, but it's, you've got to put the effort in as well. But, hopefully if I fly again, waiting another 9 years to fly again would be harder rather than easier. But, the opportunity to go beyond low Earth orbit or do a 6-month expedition is a great opportunity as well. And, you just put your time in and do your job well, and, good things come. So I think I'll leave it at that.
All right, well, that's all the time that we have with our Atlantis crew today, so that will conclude this briefing, and we'd like to thank the crew very much for coming. And thank you very much. This concludes the briefing.